Okay. All right. We have Gabby Ortega here with us today inside of Metamorphosis. Hello, everybody. And we're going to be diving into inner child healing. And I know we've been talking about healing the rejection and abandonment wound, especially during a lot of the content that's happening in stage 2. So we will dive into that today with Gabby. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Chelsea. I'm really excited to be here with you guys. I apologize I couldn't make the evening class. So for everybody watching in the evening, hi. And feel free to DM me or message me with any questions that you guys have, whoever's here, whomever is watching it later. So before we jump in, just like, I don't know if you know anything about me. I'm not going to like spend 20 minutes on it, but I'll just give you a brief kind of glimpse. I'm Gabby Ortega. I am a I don't even know what to call myself at this point, somatic life coach that specializes in trauma, specifically complex trauma and the nervous system and the brain. I have a master's degree in clinical psychology where I double specialize in trauma and early childhood development because I had a lot of my own childhood trauma that really showed up as an adult, including abandonment and rejection wounds. So I'm really glad we're going to be able to talk about this today. And I'm working on my PhD right now with my focus on complex trauma, the brain, and the nervous system, and holistic ways of approaching rewiring the brain, healing the nervous system, and helping people really achieve, a great deal of self-awareness, but also like peace. That's really the name of the game, like achieving some peace. So I'm going to have a little PowerPoint presentation for you guys. I'll talk through the inner child, what that is, the psychological framework, how it affects you, and then dive into specifically how do abandonment and rejection wounds show up for us as adults. I'm sure you have heard from other people like, get over it. It was just your childhood. Oh, you're an adult now. That was so long ago. How do you think that that can affect you now? And actually, it really, really does. And I'll explain why in a second. If you have any questions as I'm going through stuff, feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to share vocally, or if you prefer in the chat. I'm going to keep an eye on that as well. And totally fine to interrupt me. I want this to be like as interactive as possible. And then at the end, I have like a short little exercise that we can do together to kind of connect with your inner child and communicate with them. Okay, so are we feeling good about that? Awesome. Okay, so relax. One of the things I love to say is like, as adults, we feel like we have to be like in class. And I really want you to just do what your inner child wants. If you want to snack, have some snacks. If you want to like lay down, if you want to turn your camera off, no pressure at all. I'm here. I'm connecting with you guys, and however you want to connect with me is great and fine. Okay. All right. So let me share my screen. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Okay, how do I do this? So I think I have, do people's like screen show up like on the recording? Is it going to block like the PowerPoint if I have people's faces?
No, we just see the inner child healing screen, and then your face will also show up here.
Okay, perfect. Love it. Okay, so inner child healing. Yay. Okay, so just to kind of dive in, what is in the inner child, right? So this comes from Jungian psychology. He was Freud's protege, and then eventually kind of separated along the lines of spirituality, which Freud did not believe in, and so he kind of came up with his own stuff. And so he kind of coined what's called the eternal child, the puella aeternus or eterna. And the kind of, if you boil it down, it's the idea that there are many different parts that we have alive inside of us. Some folks call it archetypes, other folks just call it parts work. And so we have our inner child, our inner teen. We are basically every age that we have ever lived all those different ages are always alive inside of us at any given time in our subconscious. So the newborn you, the 5-year-old you, the 7-year-old you, the 15, 16, 20, 25, up until however old you are now, every single age and version of you is still alive and a part of you, and sometimes directing the show depending on what's going on and if they're triggered. They're always listening, they're always absorbing, and they're always taking in everything that's going on underneath your level of conscious awareness. You, as you are right now, is like your conscious awareness, your consciousness, your presence. And these all live in what's called your subconscious mind, which is a part of your unconscious, but just like a part of it. And so when we think about the inner child, what we're really talking about is the ages of 0 to 7. Now, of course, like every age you've ever been is very important and all of that. But the ages from 0 to 7 are when you are the most impressionable. It's when essentially you're creating the blueprint for your personality, how you see the world, what your place in the world is, what your value is, and all of those things, because we are in what's called a theta brainwave state. So theta brainwave state, we have many different types of brainwaves, alpha, beta, all of those, delta, theta. Theta is essentially a state of hypnosis. We don't have a prefrontal cortex that's been developed. We don't have a sense of consciousness yet. And our consciousness is in the idea of like consciousness being, I am Gabby, I am me. That doesn't develop actually until later on. And so we're basically sponges from the ages of 0 to 7, and we're born knowing nothing, right? And so all of the information we are taking in at those developmental ages from 0 to 7 is helping us really shape our subconscious mind, our thoughts, our belief systems, and all of those really important things that later play kind of like a record in the background, and they become the glasses through which we filter our life experiences. So if you can think of a time in your life when you had, let's say, an experience with someone, a friend, a partner, anybody, but their interpretation of that same event was very different. Kind of like thinking, I'm working with a couple right now, and like one of them, they had like an interaction where one of them felt very like unheard and unseen, and then the other one felt like they were really hearing and seeing them. And it's like, wait, how, like, where is that disconnect happening? It's because something is going on in your subconscious that is, you're interpreting, you're making meaning from these experiences that you're having, but the meaning that you're making is directly impacted by all of the things you experienced during this time. So for example, I went through a tremendous amount of bullying when I was young, never stopped. It was awful. And so I wondered why at the age of like 25, 26, I just had so much social anxiety all the time. And I thought every interaction, people were constantly judging me. Every time I went outside, I got anxiety because I thought people were looking at me or they were thinking things about me. You know, I'm like, oh, they think I'm stupid, or oh, they think I'm, ugly or fat, or oh, this and that. Meanwhile, they're busy with their own damn lives. Like we're all like consumed with our own self, right? Like no one's thinking about us really if we're like strangers walking down the street. But it was because during my formative years, the messages I received from my peers were, you are worthless, you're ugly, you're fat, you're stupid, no one wants to be your friend, and we're going to reject you. And so my interpretation of most social interactions up until I became aware of this part of myself were filled with anxiety and filled with doubt and filled with, I think that people don't like me, when really people really did like me. And like I was just interpreting it that way. Okay, so that's kind of an example of how this shows up. And we'll talk about specifically how the rejection wound and how the abandonment wound, when you experience those in childhood, show up as an adult for you. So ages 0 to 7, we're really impressionable. Every single experience we have, whether it's with our primary caretakers, our siblings, in school, socially, they all have a deep, deep, deep impact in shaping who we are and how we see the world and ourselves. Now, if you have, let's say, parents or caregivers who can't attune meaning they can't read your emotional cues and show up to support you, or meet your physical, psychological needs. These can have really serious long-term effects. I have a 9-week-old baby, and I hear all the time on TikTok, because I'm like all over TikTok, like most people are these days, I think. I see parents posting about the cry it out method, which, by the way, Dr. Ferber took back later on. He was like, that wasn't a good one. But they're like, yeah, I let them cry it out. No judgment if you do that. That's totally fine. Everybody's their own parent. But personally, that is your baby, right? Knowing what I know, that's your baby basically communicating, I need something from you. They're not crying for no reason, right? And so many people will say, oh, well, when I let them cry it out, they eventually stop crying. And mostly it has to do with sleeping, and they'll sleep through the night. They'll be fine. What they're doing is actually learning that their needs are not going to be met. No one is coming to help them, and they shut down. They're not learning to sleep through the night. They're learning that they're abandoned, and that it's safer, because in the wild, if you're making a lot of noise, because our first instincts are to survive, it's like they get quiet because they shut down. They learn no one's coming to help them. And it's safer in the wild to be quiet, because otherwise an animal can come and eat you, and you're very vulnerable as a baby. So if you have parents that didn't understand why you were upset about something, or told you be quiet or stop crying, or this isn't a big deal, because maybe to them it wasn't a big deal, all of that can create abandonment wounds, rejection wounds, feeling like not good enough, feeling like something's wrong with you, all of that, etc. And like I said, it can be parents, it can be caregivers if you're not raised by your parents. It can also be peers, teachers, whoever you're around a lot, and if you get these repeated messages, they become beliefs that you take on and you own, and they stay with you for a long time. Okay. So that's kind of why, that's where the inner child comes from. And our inner child is very active, especially when it comes to relationships with others in the world, whether it's a boss or a friend or a lover, whoever it is, because our most early experiences are all relational based, with your parents, with your caregivers, with your peers, and things like that. So let's say if you've experienced rejection in your life, whether it's through like bullying, or you had a parent who was really like, you better get straight A's or I'm not going to show you love or affection, or I'm not going to say I love you very often, or I'm not going to meet your emotional needs. Like, how do these rejection wounds specifically show up? So what we see in clinical psychology and with people who come into therapy, because I was a therapist before I was a coach, these are the things: low self-esteem, right? So chronic feelings of unworthiness and inadequacy. They need a constant need for external validation to feel valued. What is really funny is you'll see a lot of really famous people, a lot of really highly successful people have big rejection wounds, because why do you think they overachieve? Why do you think there's this drive to be the best and the best and the best and the best, and make the most money and be the most famous and most loved people in the whole world? Because they have low self-esteem. They have rejection wounds from somewhere that are now dictating that they must be the best of the best in order to be loved and worthy. Fear of failure. So if you ever fear like not doing well or not being perfect, perfectionism, right? Any kind of sense that something you do might be wrong, that is a rejection wound coming alive as an adult. You may avoid new challenges or opportunities to avoid rejection. You'll over prepare, perfectionism. Really, making mistakes is not acceptable. Making a mistake means you're a bad person. Making a mistake means that you failed. When making mistakes is literally how we learn. When you think of a baby, trying to learn how to walk, how many times is that baby going to fall right on his face until he learns how to walk? And do you go to the baby, nah, you suck, you're the worst, just stop trying? No. So why do we do that to ourselves, right? But yeah, so avoiding making mistakes at all costs, even at the cost of others, right? If you are a people pleasers, rejection wounds go hand in hand. They are very tightly knit. You will do anything to avoid rejection from other people because that story that comes up in your subconscious has something to do with I will be abandoned, I will be left, I will be not lovable. And so we bend over backwards. I did this for years, like bending over backwards for everybody and anybody, never saying no, not having any boundaries, all because I would feel so much anxiety around those things, right? And I just wanted to avoid the anxiety. But what it really was, when you dig deep, is your subconscious giving you messages that if you don't do this people pleasing and make everybody around you happy and caretake everybody's emotional needs and make sure everybody's good, then you're not going to be loved. You're going to be alone and you're going to be rejected. Okay. And so some of the hardest things for people to learn, if you're a people pleaser, is how to find safety in the body and in the mind with your inner child, learning how to say no. No is a complete sentence. It still gives me goosebumps. I still have a hard time just saying no. I'll be like, no, thanks. So it's a constant practice, a constant learning. But yeah, so if you find yourself having people pleasing stuff going on, let's look at the rejection wound that's happening. Hypersensitivity to criticism. So if you really do not like getting constructive feedback, or if someone tells you, hey, what you did really kind of hurt me, or I didn't really love it, and your immediate thing is to go, oh my God, or like, oh, or anger, like, screw you, like, how dare you? I have every right to do this. Like, those are triggered responses, right? Like, we should be able to hold both things true, right? Like, that maybe we can take some constructive feedback because we can always improve. And also, maybe the person's wrong. That's also a possibility. But if you have like a very strong emotional reaction to criticism, chances are you have something going on with your rejection wound. Also taking things really personally, when things aren't that personal, is part of that hypersensitivity to criticism. A lot of folks who have rejection wounds really struggle in intimate relationships, right? There's the idea that, oh my God, I'm going to open up and I'm going to get too close and then this person's going to leave, right? And that's also kind of abandonment wound stuff. But this idea that if someone really gets to know the real me, they're not going to like me. So I'm going to be this chameleon and I'm going to be whoever my partner wants me to be until it all falls apart, because you can't fake it forever, right? And then what ends up happening too is that we pick the wrong partners because we pick the partner that we think reflects the version of us that will be loved. We don't pick the partner that is actually aligned for our true self, because we're not even sure who our true self is sometimes. Also self-sabotaging in relationships to prevent being rejected first, picking fights for no reason, looking at someone and going, oh, like I'm, 1 week really attracted to them, the next week, ooh, their toes are weird, I don't want to be with this person. Something weird like that. You can really like sabotage your own relationships when you have this rejection wound, because the idea is if I force a breakup, or if I force this person to leave, then it's on my terms. And I avoid the rejection of I was really me and I was open and loving and I still got rejected because that feels too intense. So I'm going to sabotage this, make it really uncomfortable and awkward and horrible, because that feels to me like control, and on my terms, I'm pushing this person away. Social withdrawal is another one. So avoiding social situations. Oh yeah, Carrie, go ahead.
Okay, so I definitely am going to admit that I have rejection wounds, and just looking at the difficulty in intimate relationships, I feel like I skew on the other side. Like,
Okay.
I feel like I am anxiously attached, so I will somehow find the avoidantly attached person and go right to them. And it's not because I feel like they're going to love me more easily. It's because I guess it's comfortable, because that's how I felt in the dynamic with my parents when I was younger. So it's almost like it's like, I don't know, I just go towards them subconsciously and then end up like re-wounding myself.
Yeah, so that is really, really, really common. I'm sure you've heard like the idea that we date our parents, or we recreate these dynamics from early childhood, with our caregivers, with our lovers, because it does feel, for the subconscious mind, it feels familiar and that feels safe. I know how to deal with this. I know what to do in this dynamic, but I don't know what to do in a dynamic with someone who wants me. So that kind of unknown, our brain goes, no, 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 no. Better the devil you know than the devil you don't. This is safe. You know how to, you've done this before. This is not your first rodeo with an avoidant attachment. This feels safe, even though it doesn't make you happy.
So it's sort of like on a deeper level, you are avoiding getting too close because you're picking someone who will never be able to, I will never be able to have that closeness with. So it's
Yeah.
like someone who I know will never get too close to me, because if someone really sees me, scary.
Yep, nailed it right on the head. There you go. And I want you guys to remember that, in your subconscious brain, it's really like also thinking about animals, right? And so our brain operates in the sense that it's looking for survival, for you to survive, procreate, and keep the human race going. It's not looking for you to be happy. That's what your conscious brain, which is very new, it's kind of like, there's a great metaphor. I'm forgetting the name of the book right now. The happiness hypothesis that this psychiatrist did, where he said your subconscious mind is like an elephant and your conscious brain is like a rider. So you can kind of like ride this elephant and direct it where you want to go, which is your emotions, and you're making choices and picking partners and blah, blah, blah. But a lot of times that elephant is going to kind of take over the show because it's bigger and more powerful and stronger than your conscious mind, which is why doing this work makes your rider bigger and stronger. So you can have more control when you know that this is what you're doing. You're going to find yourself, okay, questioning the next relationship you get into and going, is this an avoidant? Am I sabotaging potential intimacy with a good partner by picking someone who is always going to be running away? And then you can go, I'm not doing this again. And that's the rider directing the elephant, even though the elephant's like, no, 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 this is safe. This feels good. I like this path. That's the rider going, no, we're going to go in the jungle. And we're going to find safety in that. And we're going to pave a new path. And we're going to regulate ourselves and create a new reality. And then you're firing new neurons, and suddenly you're reprogramming literal brain structures that have been playing on a loop for decades, right? And before you know it, you've created new neural pathways that help you connect to people that actually want to connect with you and to feel safe in that and to make that familiar, right? But until we do that, our unconscious will drive the show. It'll drive our sexual attraction. It's really wild, but it's 95% of our thoughts and feelings come from our subconscious, 95%. So always questioning your thoughts, your feelings, your impulses, asking yourself, where is this coming from? And then using your conscious mind to connect to your subconscious, analyzing it, and then making a conscious choice before taking an action. You're looking at all of this stuff first, pausing, slowing down. So I hope that makes sense. So awesome. Okay, cool. So, and then the last thing is overachievement. So like I mentioned with some of these, like, Forbes top 100, like whatever, like there's a lot of this overachievement to make up for the rejection wound. If I am the best of the best, no one can reject me. If I'm perfect, no one's going to reject me or walk away. Because why would they? I checked all the boxes. I did all the things. I'm above and beyond, and so we are always constantly trying to meet this unmeetable goal, and then we're miserable because perfection doesn't exist, and overachieving is in many ways self-denial, denial of your own humanity, right? Because you're constantly striving and overachieving rather than living, being present. So that's the rejection wound. Now, abandonment wounds are similar but different. So if you grew up in, let's say, and these can happen like unintentionally, by the way, it's not like you have to have abusive parents or be bullied or have like toxic experiences to actually have these wounds. These wounds can show up if like your parents just didn't know like how to be attuned to your emotional or psychological needs, you know. Or it could just happen if you have two parents and you're like, they're working all the time because that's how you survive, that's how they put food on the table. They both had to work like long hours, and then you felt abandoned as a child because you needed them, but you had a babysitter, or you had to raise your sibling, or you guys were latchkey kids, you know, taking yourself home from school. Parents can have really good intentions and caregivers can have really good intentions, but sometimes these things just happen because of circumstances. So I just want to like point that out, that you don't have to be like traumatized to have this stuff show up. It's just more of the messages your unconscious is receiving, and because you're in that theta brainwave state, it's the meaning you're making around the world and of yourself. So if you have abandonment wounds, these are some ways that this can show up for you as an adult. So there's like a fear of being alone. Like if you play, I used to play my TV or the radio 24/7 in my house. I'm not watching it. I'm not, you know, I'm not doing anything. I'm just like walking around the house, but silence, being by myself, I just would have so much anxiety. So this kind of discomfort of being alone, anxiety might come up, fear. You might numb it out with substances. I know a lot of people who do that, you know, when they don't want to be alone or with themselves, they grab their wine or they, you know, grab their joint, and then suddenly things are okay. You know what I mean? So any kind of fear of being alone with yourself in that silence can be coming from abandonment wounds, because being abandoned or neglected even was really awful and it was really painful. So being alone now is hard and painful. There's also the idea that we will stay in unhealthy relationships to avoid loneliness. Very, very common, especially for women. You know, how many times have, I don't know you guys, but I've definitely been in a relationship where I knew it wasn't working. I, you know, stayed way too long, but it was because I just didn't want to be alone. I was like, no one else is out there for me. Like, this is, I just make this work. But really, it was because I didn't want to be alone, you know? Codependency, kind of like a little bit similar. You kind of rely on other people for emotional support and your identity. So, you know, you let other people dictate who you are, and then you become that person because that version of you makes them happy and makes them stay and makes you receive love. So it feels good. So you kind of like shift who you are. Or you can't be happy unless the other person is happy. You know, I used to be in relationships where if, you know, let's say my boyfriend at the time had a bad day at work or something and he came home and he was upset, I literally would drop everything and be like, I'm going to make dinner, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, because I was so anxious that he was upset and I needed him to be okay for me to be okay, right? And so that kind of idea that everybody else's emotional state dictates how your emotions are. One of the most beautiful, freeing things about healing my inner child was I don't feel that anymore. And so everybody else can be having their own shit going on. And I'm like, okay, you do you. Can I support you? No? Okay. Well, you know, call me later. I'm protecting my peace, but I'm here for you if you need me. But no anxiety around that. So it's really cool, like how this stuff can really free you up, this work. Insecure attachment styles. So we talked a little bit about attachment styles. So the abandonment wound can kind of come up in two different ways: anxious attachment, where you're really clingy, you need to hold on to something because you don't want to be abandoned, or you avoid connecting because the idea of connecting is so scary because the potential of it being taken away is overwhelming. So those two attachment styles are related to the abandonment wound. Overreacting to breakups. So like breakups are really hard. But sometimes we go to such an extreme, we get extremely depressed. We think about things like suicide. We think about you know, being alone forever. We can't leave our bed for weeks at a time, things like that. And so that is really a triggered response. Like that is not necessarily, I don't want to say healthy or unhealthy because I think those words are very subjective, but it goes to an extreme, right? And that is something to really look at with compassion and go, well, I wonder why. This is just one person of 7 billion people on the planet. Why am I feeling so distressed and broken over this, you know? And then there's an idea that we idealize our past partners and relationships. Like we can only see the good, or it's very hard to remember the bad. And our memory is kind of wonky when it comes to that stuff, our ability to really recall the facts of the matter. Clinginess and possessiveness. So, excessive need for closeness and control over your relationships. Jealousy and mistrust of partners related to abandonment wounds. Idea that somebody's always doing something to abandon us or hurt us or leave us, and all of that. And then that can lead to self-sabotage, because what if they're not? And then they're going to be like, hey, I feel really like you're attacking me all the time. Seeking validation through relationships. So entering relationships primarily to feel secure and validated, not because you feel connected, but because it helps you feel safe and it helps you feel like I'm lovable. If this person loves me, if I get this person to love me, then that means I'm lovable, rather than, oh, this person would really add a nice addition to my life. Maybe like the cherry on top of an already great cake, but this is not the case usually when you have the abandonment wound. Difficulty feeling whole or satisfied without a partner, also related to like not wanting to be alone. Self-sabotaging in relationships, so pushing your partners away out of the fear that they will eventually leave. So again, when you push your partner away unconsciously, by cheating, by avoiding, by picking fights, by being overly clingy when you know that that is something that makes them anxious, controlling them. The idea is that we did it on our terms and they're going to leave anyway. So I would rather it be from me than, and I have control, than them just leaving me out of nowhere and I'm shocked. Like I said, engaging in behavior that undermines the relationship stability. So all of that. And emotional volatility. So mood swings, emotional outbursts triggered by perceived signs of abandonment. So you think somebody's going to leave you. And so the emotionality, the elephant takes over, and you go to like rage, you go to despair, you go to shut down, anxiety attacks, things like that. Or you can't find that emotional stability because you're thinking someone is doing things that are leading to up to like leaving you. And difficulty regulating your emotions in relationships, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. A lot of clients that I've worked with as a coach have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder. And that includes a tremendous amount of emotional volatility. When we were able to heal and regulate the nervous system and unpack their inner child and these childhood wounds, I don't think one person reverted back to having those extreme mood swings or emotional volatility or the symptoms that are really clustered together to give that diagnosis. And this is part of the incredible work that you can do holistically to address some really serious, potentially serious issues that you have in your life that don't need a pill. We can really unpack this stuff and heal our brain and heal our nervous system and get to a place that we're a brand new, more us version of us than we've ever been in our life, and feel safe in that. So let's look at the time. Okay. Not knowing how to relate to your inner child can lead to a lot of difficulties, right? Not seeing how your inner child is showing up in your life in every way, not understanding, not having a connection with them is what causes a disconnect and keeps us stuck in these cycles of trauma and cycles of despair and unhappiness and frustration and all of these things. If we can really see our inner child and understand how they're showing up, we can hold their hand and we can talk to them and we can actually like communicate with them in our subconscious in different ways and help them feel safe, because we become our ideal parents. We have to step into the role of being the safe space for our inner child to be able to express themselves but not take over. So when you're afraid that someone is going to leave you, so you start picking fights with them, it's about asking yourself, I always ask this question to clients and it's really helpful. You're feeling really emotional. or confused or lost, I want you to like close your eyes, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, what age am I right now? What age do I feel right now? And then go back to that age. Whatever pops up is the right answer. Don't overthink it. It could be like, oh, I got into a big fight with my partner because he was like working and not paying attention to me, and I felt really like angry, so angry, and then I yelled at him and now it's a mess. And then it just like quiet and go somewhere quiet, breathe, close your eyes. What age do you feel? Oh, I feel 5. Why do I feel 5? Because when I was 5, my dad wouldn't pay attention to me because he was working all the time, and he would yell at me for interrupting him. And then like I felt really rejected. Okay, so I'm feeling really rejected right now. How can I hold space for this 5-year-old me and talk to her and help her work through this moment? What does she need right now? So it's really interesting how you can kind of just like ask yourself questions to be able to access these parts. Heather, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
No worries.
So oftentimes I feel like, I've been doing some of this inner child work over the last year, and I can like tune into an age, but oftentimes I can't remember what's going on at that age. And so I have a hard time working through like why I'm feeling that way. Do you feel like there's something that can help me to like break those barriers, or it's just like just acknowledging that like, okay, this time feels sensitive and I don't need to necessarily know why? I just sometimes feel like it maybe prevents me from like, really working through whatever is there.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that come up when you mention that. So the first thing is your subconscious is protecting you.
Oh,
When we go through volatile periods during our childhood, or there's stuff going on that's too heavy for us to still bring to our awareness, our subconscious will hide it from us. It'll repress memories. We hear this a lot with trauma survivors, especially childhood trauma survivors. Can't remember their childhood, can't remember chunks of their time during that stage, because it was so painful and so deeply effective that your brain said, we're packing this away so deep in our subconscious until we feel safe enough, that child feels safe enough to make themselves known. So sometimes the best answer you can give yourself is, I don't know, and that's okay. And do what you can in that moment to just hold yourself through it and ask for support, or do something nice for yourself, take a break, whatever it is, cry, scream, get into your somatics, because you don't have to necessarily be aware of everything to work through it. Our emotional responses and things like that actually come from our nervous system, from our flight, fight, freeze. So if you're interested, you can check out polyvagal theory. It's brilliant and it explains a lot. And so we can actually focus less on the intellectual understanding and more on the body's remembering, and focus on actually accessing, which Chelsea's so great at. I love the somatic work that you do. And really attune to the body and what it's telling you, where you are, and just kind of go through the motions to soothe or release or whatever it is that you need to get that nervous system back to a safe place. Chances are, if you can create enough safety in your body, eventually those memories will come when your subconscious feels safe enough for you. It feels like you're ready to access them. And it could be triggered by a particular relationship, a moment in your life that's going to happen, of death, of whatever. And suddenly you'll be flooded with a lot of things, memories that you are like, where did these come from? So trust the timing of your mind. It's there, it's protecting you because it doesn't yet feel ready for you to become aware of these memories. And maybe it'll stay that way forever, maybe not. But if you do want to access them, there's what's it called? Hypnosis, really great. There's also holotropic breath work, which is phenomenal and really unlocks stuff in your subconscious. But keep in mind, if you push yourself too fast too far, too fast, it could be re-traumatizing for you. So really, it's kind of like you have to go at your own pace with it, and see what happens, and work at your own pace for sure. Does that answer your question? Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So that's this. So a lot of us, most adults are actually walking around kind of behaving unconsciously as a projection of their wounded inner child. If you every time you interact with someone, every time, like anybody, or you just see people on the TV. I love watching reality TV because I'm watching wounded inner children all over the place. It's fascinating. Like, like Real Housewives, or, I don't know. I also find it easier to concentrate with screaming rich women, like in the background. I don't know why. But I've just watched The Valley and Vanderpump Rules and things like that. And I'm just like, wow, all these people are like just bleeding their inner child wounds everywhere without realizing, and causing chaos. So it's just fascinating. But most people are not aware of their inner child or their wounds. And so they're walking around kind of like projecting all of this onto everybody. And even though we grow up physically, we can really stay stuck psychologically. If you look at a lot of boomers, they are stuck at like a much younger age, in my opinion. There are healthy ones out there who have done the work for sure. But there are a lot of people, especially like people in power right now, who are acting like 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds. They're not acting like adults. And you're like, well, why? Because psychologically, they stopped developing at a really early age because something happened to them and it stunted their emotional development. Right. And so they didn't do the work to address that. And so they got stuck. So we can, if we have really even like pretty severe things that happen to us as children, we can even like get stuck at a certain age emotionally and developmentally, until we start to work with our inner child. So I'm glad you're recording this. Feel free. I won't like waste too much time actually getting into all of this, but it's essentially like, how do you stop your inner child from running the show and making all your choices for you? You have to become your own best parent, your protector, the parent or person that you needed that you didn't have. Right. So for me, my mom worked all the time because she was the primary breadwinner. She's a psychologist. And my father was had bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder, triple diagnosed, really dangerous. He stayed at home because he didn't feel like working, and then caused chaos. And he was my primary caretaker. And so there were so many times where I felt abandoned by my mom, even though she had to work to survive, where I felt alone, where I felt scared, where I felt like my dad could explode with anger at any moment and I would go hide under my bed. And it was so scary, right? And I developed a lot of these rejection and abandonment wounds because of that relationship I had with him, because he was my primary caretaker. And so as an adult, when I was working through this, I was like, well, what do I need? I need to be my own safe space. And that meant like, I want to decorate my house a certain way. I want to have cozy pillows everywhere. I want to have cozy clothes. I don't think I've worn jeans in like 10 years. Why? Because I feel like they restrict and they close me in on my stomach. I hate that feeling because that was how I felt when I was anxious. So I wear like loose fitting, fun clothes that make me feel safe. I very, very protective over myself. I can count on one hand how many close friends I have, because most people are not doing the work unless you find yourself in a community of people that are all really into this work, which I have through Instagram and social media, which is wonderful. But like, they're not like down the street. They're not people I hang out with every day. But I'm very protective. If someone crosses that boundary and I make them aware of that and we talk about it, but they don't change their behavior, or they're not able to really like be a safe space for my inner child, like I distance myself, because that person is not a safe person. That's okay. Doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means they're not a safe person. And that's okay. We're not for everybody, and they need to do some work, and I'm not going to force them. It's not my job. I cut my dad off 12 years ago, went no contact. from the advice of my really brilliant therapist at the time, I have never felt more safe in my life. And there are times where he'll get a new phone number and try and reach out, block. He still has no desire to take any accountability, and reaches out only to try and feel like I love him so that he can feel good about himself because he's a narcissist, right? So I protect the hell out of myself from him. He has no access to me, and he will never have access to my child because he's not a safe person. I hold my boundaries pretty strongly without being rigid, right? So it's about the idea, rigid boundaries are like, you cross me once, I'm never talking to you again. That's not safe either. You want to have like something in between porous, which is like letting people walk all over you, and rigid, which is like completely cutting people out the first time they make a mistake, right? But if someone's repeatedly doing something, goodbye, see you later. So really, you have to protect yourself. If you're in a bad situation, a bad relationship, a bad job with an abusive boss, see ya. Peace. I'm not going to let that person have access to my inner child because I'm holding her hand every single day, and I'm creating a safe world for her to live in so she can feel protected and nurtured and loved. I give her what she needs. I hear her. I see her when she makes herself known through my emotions or my thoughts. I go, oh, there you are. Hey, what's going on? Oh, you're feeling this way? Okay. Tell me more about that. Okay. You need a hug? You want to go throw something and break it? You want to get an ice cream? What do you need? Let's do it. Hell yeah. Like, fuck yeah, let's go. You know, and that is really, I want you to think about it. Like, and I think Chelsea asked you guys to bring like a photo of yourself keep a photo of your inner child, your child version of yourself, or a few. Have them look at that child, look at her or him. See them every day. Put it on your fridge, put it on your laptop computer. One of my clients has it as her screensaver on her home screen on her phone. Every day, that version of you and all those versions of you are looking to you to be their best parent, to be what they needed when they were little but didn't get. And you get that chance to hold their hand again and hold their hands, and they hold each other's hands. You guys walk this world together, and it's beautiful and awesome. So this also includes like, give your inner child what they need. But if you are someone who had no limits or no discipline is actually pretty healthy. It keeps us safe. So it's kind of like, you know, my mom, because she was like working all the time, and because my dad was so crazy, was like, you need to get out of the house as soon as you're kind of old enough to get out of the house, right? And because of that, and because I was bullied and didn't have a lot of friends, when I switched schools in high school, there were no rules. My mom wanted me to have friends. She was like, go to all those parties, like, don't worry about what time you're coming home, like, blah, blah, blah. And it ended up like actually, I mean, it was fun, but I got myself into pretty dangerous situations that I'm very lucky nothing truly bad ever happened. But, you know, I found myself hanging with a bunch of really 15 years old, hanging out with 25-year-olds. There's no reason for that. There's no reason to be in the back of some 25-year-old's Mustang driving 45 on a neighborhood street in New Jersey with tequila in the back seat at 15 years old. Like, there's nothing good is going to happen because of that. So another thing is like, give yourself boundaries and limits and healthy discipline. When you find yourself, if you grew up with like too much freedom, that actually is not always a good thing. Have a bedtime. If you know you need to get up at 6 a.m. tomorrow and you want to be fresh, get to bed by 10. You can scroll on your phone, you know, whatever. But like, you know, that's going to be what feels good in the morning for you. If you know that like you're like a bottle of wine drinker a night, and you wake up the next day feeling like shit and you can't, you know, work out, but you know you want to work out and you know that feels good for you, cut it back a little bit. Give yourself a limit. Honor that. If you say you're not going to talk to that ex, don't text that ex. Right? Block them, delete the number, whatever you need to do. If they were bad to you and you're like, I'm not messing with them anymore. I'm not going to put myself in harm's way and get punched again, you know, emotionally or whatever. Don't text them. So that's the other side of it. Like, give yourself full love and acceptance and support, and give your inner child like everything that they're asking for, that they need to feel good, but also with mindful boundaries. to keep you safe, right? Not to punish, but limits to keep you safe. So these are some general things you can do to connect with your inner child. Obviously, journaling is a big one, and self-awareness work with a practitioner in this course like this, reading books about, working with your inner child, things like that. I talk to my inner child every day. You can talk to yourself literally. You don't have to look in a mirror or anything like that. Just talk to your inner child and see what thoughts pop up, because your subconscious is going to pop up thoughts into your mind. And those initial thoughts, without judging them or controlling them, are your inner child's responses. So you can say, hey, how are you doing today? How are you feeling? What do you need? What's going on? Give me the tea, whatever. And just check in with them, talk to them. How do you feel about this? Do you like this person? What do you like about them? Do they make you feel safe? Do they not make you feel safe? Okay, I hear you. Literally talk to them. And like I said, have a picture of little you somewhere. You can talk to the picture. Writing as your inner child. So this is really fascinating. I love this geeky stuff. You take your dominant hand and write a question or write to your inner child. Then you're going to take your non-dominant hand and write whatever the answer is that comes into your head first. Your non-dominant hand is directly linked to your subconscious mind when you write. So it may be frustrating because it's like hard to write with your non-dominant hand, but if you exchange, your dominant hand is your conscious adult self, you can connect and communicate through writing with that part of your subconscious. So use your non-dominant hand for the inner child that you want to communicate with. You're the wise inner parent. There's a great exercise as well called an empty chair exercise. And I do recommend, if you have trauma, not to do this alone. If you're going to address some really serious, heavy things, definitely work with someone to hold space for you for that, so that you're not feeling alone in that. But you can put a chair, empty chair, right in front of you. And I want you to close your eyes and step into the shoes of whatever inner child part of yourself was wounded by, let's say, a parent or a person in your life that hurt you or abandoned you or rejected you or whatever it might be. And then I want you to jump around, stomp around, get yourself activated, and then open your eyes and just let it rip, as if they're sitting right there, as if they're really going to listen to you, as if they're going to tell you what you need to get closure. And our brain cannot tell the difference between fantasy and reality. It can't tell the difference between a daydream and real life. And if you can get to a place where your emotions are activated and you are really feeling this, like, fuck you, how you ruined my childhood, you were so angry with me, I was so scared and I didn't deserve that, and blah, 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 and you really let that rip, your brain's going to go, oh, I'm actually saying this to this person. Oh, I'm closing that trauma loop. I'm expressing how I really feel to this person, even if you're not actually addressing that person. And then imagine them receiving it and apologizing or taking that ownership or responsibility. And our brain goes, oh, we can put a neat little bow on that and move on. And so it's a really cool exercise. Obviously, creating art, always a great way to connect with your inner child, helping them express how they feel non-verbally. Why? Because the ages 0 to 7, you're really not that verbal. Our verbal communication and verbal understanding is not developed yet, because that's in our prefrontal cortex, and that it takes time for us to really start being able to do that. So the way we are impacted the most and how we take in information and how we learn how to be a human is through nonverbal communication, right? So the way we access our inner child is through mostly non-cognitive, nonverbal ways, is like the fastest way. Music, paint, drawing, dance, movement. These are all like nonverbal, right? And singing music, like, even the lyrics don't really matter. It's more the actual music. So anything like that. Somatic practices, phenomenal. These are some examples of ones that I really like. These are like butterfly taps, self-hugging. Holotropic breath work is like level 10, but you can also do like pranayama, gentle breathing, box breathing, all kinds of breath work, great ways to work with your subconscious. Dance or movement. full body shaking, and TRE, which is trauma release exercise. And it's a specific, you have to be trained to be able to deliver it, but they do have YouTube videos and it's pretty simple. So you can just follow those, and it's not actually traumatizing. It's very relaxing. It regulates your nervous system. Meditation, visualization. So there's a couple of things you can do. You can imagine your adult self walking into your childhood home and meeting your inner child and holding their hand and talking to them and communicating with them. If your home was a really unsafe place, I recommend visualize meeting your inner child in a field somewhere really pretty and safe. And lastly, be a child, laugh, have joy in your life, adventure, spontaneity, learn new things, travel to new places, meet new people, have new experiences, play, play, play. We forget to play because we're old now. We have to be so serious about everything, you know? No, play a lot. And these are some little mantras. And then I know we have about 15 minutes, so it's perfect timing. So I'm going to put on a little music for you guys, and I want you to spend about 5 to 7 minutes, maybe writing a letter to little you, and then we can do any questions or anything that you have afterwards. Does that sound good? Okay, cool. So I want you to take out a piece of paper, and this will kind of be the instruction. Let me see. Share computer sound. Okay. So I'm going to stop the screen sharing and then I'll share the sound. So what I want you to do is grab a piece of paper and a pen, or you can type it out on your phone. Both are fine. And you're going to write a letter to maybe the version of you that's in that photo, that age that you have, that you brought with you, or think about a time in your life where you felt really abandoned or rejected. And I want you to just like write a letter to them as your wise inner parent. And just say what's on your heart, like you're directly talking to them. And whatever comes up is exactly what you need to say. And that's that. So we'll spend about 5 minutes on that, and you can start whenever.
I have a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel the connection to the rejection wound,
Yeah.
but I can't think of a time in my childhood where I actually felt rejected. And maybe I'm just not getting what examples could be, but I felt like my parents were quite present, but I still feel the rejection wound.
Hmm. So how does the rejection wound show up for you now?
In partnership, more so in the past than it does now, but it still does come up now. In my past partnership, I actually felt alone in the connection, like there was like no intimacy. And I felt like we were both in rejection wounds. So we would both feel like we would react to something and feel like we needed to like pull away to create safety, or yeah, or there was like he would people please and I was hypersensitive. Yeah.
Okay. So like growing up, like what was the dynamic between your mom and dad?
They had that. Yeah. So maybe I learned how to love through them.
Exactly. Well, that's exactly the idea. Our parents' relationship with themselves, or with each other rather, is the blueprint for our romantic relationships as well. So how we witnessed our parents in being together in partnership, we learn that's what love is.
Yeah.
So it may not be like a personal rejection wound that's bringing these things up in your partnerships. What it is your subconscious going, this is familiar. This is the blueprint for what love is. And this is what I am seeking. Even though it doesn't make me happy, it's what's safe and what's familiar.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, cool. Yeah. If there's any other questions, we can just do questions now, and then, you can always do the writing later if that works, or whatever works for you guys. Totally fine. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And if not, you can just work on your letter for a few minutes. Oh yeah, Carrie, go ahead.
The slide kind of flew by fast. Could you just
Yeah.
go back to, if possible, the mantras or affirmations? Because I didn't
Oh
get
yeah,
a chance to like
definitely.
really read them and take them in.
For sure. Oh, there we go. Yeah, these are just like, I mean, there's so many, and you can make your own depending on what's really alive for you. But I particularly love these. So Thich Nhat Hanh said, I go back to my inner child, I take care of my inner child. I go back to my inner child, I take care of my inner child. Like just like repeating that over and over and over in meditation can be really good. Rewiring the brain again, so your inner child knows that someone's going to show up. I see you, I hear you, I love you. I'm sorry that you're in pain, and I will take care of you.
That one,
So a
like
lot of like
that second one, like boom. Yeah.
yeah. A lot of times like children's feelings and realities are not validated. Right? I had a hamster once when I was like, I don't know, 5. Her name was Cookie. I loved Cookie. One day I took my grandma up to meet Cookie, and Cookie was dead. I was devastated. Like it was like my own mother had died. Like it was just inconsolable devastation. And my mom like got down, and she was like, tell me how that feels. And I was kind of like trying to figure out the words. And she was like, yeah, she's like, you love Cookie a lot, and Cookie meant so much to you, and I'm so sorry, and I love you. And she really validated that pain, even though it was like, it's a hamster, like as an adult, you don't have to do that. And a lot of times our parents go, oh, you lost your favorite stuffed animal and you're devastated. And they're like, we'll get you another one. Like, stop crying. It's not a big deal. But to us, we're rocked, and these big emotional experiences that we have as kids, if we don't have a healthy mirror to validate that and help us regulate and understand, that is something we crave later on. And most children aren't really taking that seriously, and really they're treat them like an adult, like they're having real feelings about real things. And it's like, yeah, you can get rejection wounds from even just that, like not having someone validate how you feel about things that are big for you. And then the last one is you're safe and you are loved and you're okay. Feeling safe and loved.
Thank you.
Yeah, anytime. And just ultimately being really kind and compassionate towards yourself all the time. Catch that part of your brain that goes, hey, you fucked up. You're not good enough. You're not lovable. You're wrong. You're bad. You're a bad kid. You're a bad girl, bad boy. And catch that voice and go, no, I'm not. I am lovable and enough just as I am. Messy and all. And I deserve that love, and I deserve to be seen, and I deserve to be heard because I'm important. So what I'll say is, I'll leave you with that exercise because, we're not going to share those letters anyway. That's for you guys. But yeah, like take some time and write a letter. And even better, I love having clients do contracts. Write a contract with yourself, with your inner child.
Can you explain what that means?
Yeah. So what I like to do is, when you've looked at how your childhood experience it has been, and you look at the ways that these wounds show up in your life, you're going to make a contract with yourself for your healing. So something you might say is, I, the wise inner parent, promise you, my inner child, that I will never let people hurt you and get away with it without saying something. I promise that I'm going to love you unconditionally every damn day. And if I don't, I'm going to also promise to try and be more aware so I can work on that. I promise you, I'm making a contract with you that I'm not going to let, I'm going to be aware, and I'm going to pick a partner that I wish I would have had in my father, my mother, their relationship. I'm going to really work hard to find somebody that's going to be a great otherwise parent for you. So whatever like you need personally that you didn't get as a child, or that you feel affected you or wounded you, it's kind of like you're making, as your best parent, you're making promises to your inner child about how you're going to show up for them so that they can heal. I promise I'm going to let you play and have fun, no matter how silly or stupid it might be. So it could be like called a contract, could be like a promise list, agreements. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to feed you healthy foods so that you thrive and grow. You know, whatever it is. Yeah. So that's a cool one. So any other like questions or things that come up for you that you are curious about, or anything else before we kind of wrap up?
Do you feel like, I know, the 0 to 7 is like the basis of the programming, right? So that stuff is like most impactful on how we're experiencing our life. But I mean, like I don't really remember a lot from that time. So I feel like I remember like more traumatic things that happened later in my childhood, or like even into like my teenage years. I mean, you feel like that stuff is just as impactful, or is it really likely that some of my behaviors and things are probably the 0 to 7?
Well, kind of both, right? So every experience that we've ever had and trauma that we've experienced is going to deeply affect us and create a trauma loop for us sometimes, where we end up re-traumatizing ourselves again and again unconsciously, like putting ourselves in positions or with people that are going to re-traumatize, re-wound us. And so if you feel like a lot of what's coming up for you today is related to that trauma, then that's true. If that's true for you, that's true for you, and that's cool. What I will also say is that its potential depends, I don't know your situation specifically, so I can't speak to that, but potentially the trauma that you experienced was set into motion from an earlier experience that then led to maybe the second experience. A lot of times there's some, if you are able to go way back, something set the stage for that trauma to maybe be able to show up in your life. And sometimes not. So really it's contextual, it depends. But again, trauma is a whole different beast, and that's also something that I mainly focus on and specialize in. So what I will say is that if you had a traumatic experience, that is imprinted into your subconscious in a very, very big way. So yeah, so that can definitely come up a lot. Yeah. Yeah. Chelsea, did you want to say something?
Well, I feel like at the basis of a lot of, like, at least for women in relationships, like safety is a really big thing. And it's like, like I love the affirmation, like you're safe, you're loved. Like I'm curious around, I don't know, how to work with your inner child to like reprogram safety, like emotional safety, like you're emotionally safe. Because like I just wrote a letter to myself around watching my parents and how they interact. And then I think that had an impact because I was picking their patterns and programs. But I think what comes up is like, oh, it's not safe, so I need to shift or close or modify so that I can create more safety.
I mean, it's interesting because like it's really like context based around, well, what made you feel unsafe and kind of addressing that specific thing. But it's about like creating safety is about showing yourself that you can protect yourself. And also that can be by having boundaries with yourself, right? It can be by cutting people out of your life that are dangerous for you. It can be about you create a sense of safety for your inner child by creating safety for yourself now. Also, recognizing that safety and discomfort are two different things. If you're uncomfortable, you're not unsafe. Making a different choice, trying something new, that also is like growth, right? So like reminding your inner child, hey, it's okay to feel uncomfortable. It's okay to feel a little scared. You're still safe. I'm going to keep you safe. I'm going to protect you because I'm here to be your eyes and your ears and your fists when it's needed. And kind of showing up in that energy can help your inner child feel really safe. And then there's the other parts that like are somatic, like holding yourself can create a real felt sense of safety. Like really hugging yourself, right? And noticing what are those moments that feel unsafe and questioning kind of why. And then going, okay, well, what would make me feel safe? And then shifting into that energy. So, I mean, there's all different kinds of ways. I would say, first and foremost, the most impactful way, it's like you're rewiring neural connections. So it's through repeated experiences of showing up for yourself in ways that create safety, that help your inner child feel safe.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you. So helpful.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. I think we're pretty much at time. Does anyone have a burning question? Carrie, are you
I
unmuted?
just wanted to say, like, thank you so much because I feel like I've gotten so much out of this presentation, and I can't wait to write the letter and like reread my notes and just dive into like all this awesome information you just gave us today. So thank you.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
You're so welcome. My pleasure. I love doing this stuff.
Beautiful. Yeah, this was so amazing. I really appreciate you. And Gabby, if I mean, I'm sure everybody may have your, do you want to just drop your Instagram handle here in case you don't? So we can connect with you.
Yeah, please feel free to DM me on Instagram or TikTok. I'll also drop my email address if you prefer to email.
Beautiful.
And if anybody's, there's so many practices that you're going to be doing this course. I'm sure you won't have any time for anything else, but if you do want to do any of the like holotropic breath work or, any of these like bigger practices, you can always reach out and we can schedule some time. And, I'm here for that too. So whatever.
Beautiful. Amazing. Okay. Can we all take ourselves off mute and rub our hands together and give Gabby a big ashtahay? Ashtahay.
Thank you guys. Ah, so warm.
Thank you so much, Gabby.